When day turns to night, and the moon is hidden from sight, shed the king of you and wear the queen. The 9 realms will open and your magic be free. Hi, my bling! It's your favorite drag witch, Nova Jupiter Jenkins. My friends call me Nova JJ, and you can too. If you haven't listened to us before, and this is your first time joining us, maybe head back and listen to the previous episodes to get caught up on the sitch with this witch. So this new moon, the one before the spring equinox, is called the Atrim Vonu moon. Atrim Vonu means from within the egg, in 12 out of the 13 dialects of the eastern mountain satyr clans of the Heath. In the 13th, it means the egg is inside. My, they're an ambitious lot. In any case, the moon is named for the anticipation of the life that will be hatching with the coming of spring. It's not quite time to hatch yet, but we can start readying ourselves for all the colors and energy that are just waiting to burst forth. Now, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, the tarot cards have not been cooperating on the new moons, and so I've been contemplating alternate methods of divination that I might be able to share on the air, and that I might have to try a few before we find what's going to work, or maybe we'll just have to cycle through a few regularly. So for this moon, I thought we could take a look at scrying. For those of you who don't think you've heard of scrying, trust me, you have. You maybe just didn't know that's what it was called. So scrying is the divinatory art of discerning information by gazing into a reflective surface. So anytime you see a fortune teller gazing into their crystal ball, that's scrying. Even the evil queen consulting her magic mirror in Snow White is a form of scrying. So before we get into the actual scrying, for Craft Corner, I thought we'd talk about how to make your own scrying tool. There are a couple of different tools that you can make at home that are cost-effective and relatively easy to make. I'm going to focus on one for right now, and we'll save the other for another episode. Water is an important element at this time of year. I mean, it's of course important at any time of year due to its necessity for survival, but apart from strict necessity, the timing of water is important. If precipitation comes at one part of the year, it can cause crops to flourish, but at another time of year it can cause them to rot. Even though I haven't spoken much about astrology on the podcast since I'm not an astrologer, we are in Pisces right now. So all that to say that water scrying can be particularly powerful at this time of year, in the dark of the new moon. Now back in ancient Egypt, they used to scry in bowls of ink. The black of the ink helped to create a world of possibility in which visions of the future could dance. We can create a similar effect minus the mess by filling a black or near black bowl with water. Just make sure it doesn't have any design inside the bowl that can interfere with your visions. My preference is to start with a white bowl and paint the bottom black with ceramic paint that'll last through many fillings with water. For those in the mundane realm, you can even get ceramic paint that's dishwasher safe. Now when you're painting the bottom of the bowl, you again want to avoid any patterns. You can go one of two ways depending on how your brain processes information. You can either paint the bowl a uniform black or paint a chaotic combination of brush strokes. Some people find that they can pull images from the chaos better, while others require a calm nothing in which the visions can form. You can experiment with both and see what works best for you. Most ceramic paints will require the bowl to be baked at high temperatures, so make sure you find a bowl that can take the heat. Before you begin painting the bowl, or after you've painted but before you fire the bowl, you'll want to consecrate the objects so that they are imbued with a purpose for which you intend. The simplest way is a sentence of dedication spoken over the paint and bowl either separately or together if you prefer. Here's how I do it. Holding the container of paint to the sky, I say, "Paint of night, paint of dreams, Darkness of the moon I entreat. Open the ways to see beyond sight, beyond the seams. Then I hold up the bowl and say, Empty vessel, faithfully waiting, hold yourself open to the destiny that unfolds within you. After painting the bowl and putting it in the oven to bake, I will say a final consecration. Fire, earth, and air, make the way safe for water to fill you and bring forth the knowledge and wisdom of the ether. Then just add water and we're ready to scry. Now some people prefer to obtain their water from a location that has significance to them, such as the local stream you played in as a child or some other equally sacred source of water. Other people will make sure that the water is distilled so that it doesn't have any impurities, but I tend to use just what's on hand. Now for scrying in the black well, or inside of the egg as the case may be, you'll want to sit with the scrying bowl in very dim lighting with just some candlelight nearby, but not close enough to see the flame directly reflected in the bowl. We'll talk about fire scrying another time. One of the key aspects of scrying is being able to clear your mind. A regular meditation practice really comes in handy here. Before beginning a session, you can choose an intention if you want to try and gain information on a particular subject, or you can just leave yourself open to whatever the universe might want or need to show you. If you do want to set an intention, you can do so silently or aloud. I like to open a scrying session with a few words. I reach within, I see within. I am empty and await the wisdom of the ether. I reach within, I see within. I am empty and await the wisdom of the ether. So intention set, mind clear. You just gaze into the water and let your eyes lose focus, and then bring that focus back beyond the surface of the water. Kind of like those 3D hidden image puzzles that were popular in... Wait, were those ever popular? Anyway, you refocus and let the images flow out of the black well of night.
Hi, Nova. Can you read this ghost story for story time tonight?
Oh, Gerald, I was just in the middle of scrying. Oh, never mind, the moment has passed. Sorry, folks, we'll have to try again next time. No, Gerald, I can't read that ghost story. We're continuing with The Black Amazon of Mars by Lee Brackett.
You never read my ghost stories.
I read that ghost story by Edgar Allan Poe.
It barely had any ghosts in it.
Well, we have to finish The Black Amazon of Mars first. Oh, hey! Your voice is kind of being picked up again. Well, now that I think about it, I think the last new moon was the first new moon where you were around during recording. That must be it. Your voice is only, kind of audible on the new moon episodes. Maybe I can tweak the spell a bit so we can hear more than a whisper.
Can I read this ghost story then?
Well, maybe next time, but as I said, we still have to get through the Black Amazon of Mars. You know, maybe we can set up a separate story time just for you where people who really enjoy whispering can listen. Let's take that offline. Okay, to the story. When we last left our intrepid hero, Eric John Stark, his companion, the Martian Kamar, had just died as they were making their way to Kushat, the city near the polar region of Mars, to return the talisman that had given Eric John Stark such odd visions. Before he could decide what to do, the wolves of Mech appeared, and Eric has gone out to meet them. And now, part 2 of Black Amazon of Mars. Stark waited until they should tire of their own silence. Finally, one demanded, "Of what country are you?" He answered, "I am called N'Chaka, the man without a tribe." It was the name they had given him, the half-human aboriginals who had raised him in the blaze and thunder and bitter frosts of Mercury. "A stranger," said the leader, and smiled. He pointed at the dead Kamar and asked, "Did you slay him?" "He was my friend," said Stark. "I was bringing him home to die." 2 riders dismounted to inspect the body. One called up to the leader, "He was from Kushat, if I know the breed, Thord, and he has not been robbed." He proceeded to take care of that detail himself. "A stranger," repeated the leader, Thord. "Bound for Kushat, with the man of Kushat. Well, I think you will come with us, stranger." Stark shrugged, and with the long spears pricking him, he did not resist when the tall Thord plundered him of all he owned except his clothes and Kamar's belt, which was not worth the stealing. His gun Thord flung contemptuously away. One of the men brought Stark's beast and Kamar's from where they were tethered, and the Earthman mounted, as usual, over the violent protest of the creature, which did not like the smell of him. They moved out from under the shelter of the walls into the full fury of the wind. For the rest of that night and through the next day and the night that followed it, they rode eastward, stopping only to rest the beasts and chew on their rations of jerked meat. To Stark, riding a prisoner, it came with full force that this was the North Country, half a world away from the Mars of spaceships and commerce and visitors from other planets. The future had never touched these wild mountains and barren plains. The past held pride enough. To the north, the horizon showed a strange and ghostly glimmer where the barrier wall of the polar pack reared up, gigantic against the sky. The wind blew down from the ice, through the mountain gorges, across the plains, never ceasing. And here and there the cryptic towers rose, broken monoliths of stone. Stark remembered the vision of the talisman, the huge structure crowned with eerie darkness. He looked upon the ruins with loathing and curiosity. The men of Mech could tell him nothing. Thord did not tell Stark where they were taking him, and Stark did not ask. It would have been an admission of fear. In mid-afternoon of the second day they came to a lip of rock where the snow was swept clean, and below it was a sheer drop into a narrow valley. Looking down, Stark saw that on the floor of the valley, up and down as far as he could see, were men and beasts and shelters of hide and brush, and fires burning. By the hundreds, by the several thousand, they camped under the cliffs, and their voices rose up on the thin air in a vast, deep murmur that was deafening after the silence of the plains. A war party, gathered now before the thaw. Stark smiled. He became curious to meet the leader of this army. They found their way single file along a winding track that dropped down the cliff face. The wind stopped abruptly, cut off by the valley walls. They came in among the shelters of the camp. Here the snow was churned and soiled and melted to slush by the fires. There were no women in the camp, no sign of the usual cheerful rabble that follows a barbarian army. There were only men, hillmen and warriors all, tough-handed killers with no thought but battle. They came out of their holes to shout at Thord and his men, and stare at the stranger. Thord was flushed and jovial with importance. "I have no time for you," he shouted back. "I go to speak with Lord Ciaran." Stark rode impassively, a dark giant with a face of stone. From time to time he made his beast curvet and laughed at himself inwardly for doing it. They came at length to a shelter larger than the others, but built exactly the same and no more comfortable. A spear was thrust into the snow beside the entrance, and from it hung a black pennant with a single bar of silver across it, like lightning in a night sky. Beside it was a shield with the same device. There were no guards. Thord dismounted, bidding Stark to do the same. He hammered on the shield with the hilt of his sword, announcing himself. "Lord Ciaran, it is Thord, with a captive." A voice, toneless and strangely muffled, spoke from within. "Enter, Thord." Thord pushed aside the hide curtain and went in, with Stark at his heels. The dim daylight did not penetrate the interior. Cressets burned, giving off a flickering brilliance and a smell of strong oil. The floor of packed snow was carpeted with furs much worn. Otherwise there was no adornment and no furniture but a chair and a table, both dark with age and use, and a pallet of skins in one shadowy corner with what seemed to be a heap of rags upon it. In the chair sat a man. He seemed very tall in the shaking light of the cressets. From neck to thigh his lean body was cased in black link mail, and under that a tunic of leather dyed black. Across his knees he held a sable axe, a great thing made for the shearing of skulls, and his hands lay upon it gently, as though it were a toy he loved. His head and face were covered by a thing that Stark had seen before only in very old paintings, the ancient war mask of the inland kings of Mars. Wrought of black and gleaming steel, it presented an unhuman visage of slitted eye-holes and a barred slot for breathing. Behind, it sprang out in a thin, soaring sweep like a dark wing edge-on in flight. The intent, expressionless scrutiny of that mask was bent, not upon Thord, but upon Eric John Stark. The hollow voice spoke again from behind the mask. "Well?" "We were hunting in the gorges to the south," said Thord. "We saw a fire." He told the story of how they had found the stranger and the body of the man from Kushat. "Kushat?" said the Lord Sieran softly. "Ah, and why, stranger, were you going to Kushat?" "My name is Stark, Eric John Stark, Earthman out of Mercury." He was tired of being called stranger. Quite suddenly he was tired of the whole business. "Why should I not go to Kushat? Is it against some law that a man may not go there in peace without being hounded all over the Norlands? And why did the men of Mech make it their business? They have nothing to do with this city." Thord held his breath, watching with delighted anticipation. The hands of the man in armor caressed the axe. They were slender hands, smooth and sinewy, small hands, it seemed, for such a weapon. "We make what we will our business, Eric John Stark." He spoke with a peculiar gentleness. "I have asked you, why were you going to Kushat?" "Because," Stark answered with equal restraint, "my comrade wanted to go home to die." "It seems a long, hard journey just for dying." The black helm bent forward in an attitude of thought. "Only the condemned or banished leave their cities or their clans. Why did your comrade flee Kushat?" A voice spoke suddenly from out of the heap of rags that lay on the pallet in the shadows of the corner. A man's voice, deep and husky, with the harsh quaver of age or madness in it. "3 men beside myself have fled Kushat over the years that matter. 1 died in the spring floods. 1 was caught in the moving ice of winter. 1 lived, a thief named Kamar, who stole a certain talisman." Stark said, "My comrade was called Greshi." The leather belt weighed heavy about him, and the iron boss seemed hot against his belly. He was beginning now to be afraid. The Lord Sieran spoke, ignoring Stark. "It was the sacred talisman of Kushat. Without it, the city is like a man without a soul." As the Vale of Tanit was to Carthage, Stark thought, and reflected on the fate of that city after the Vale was stolen. "The nobles were afraid of their own people," the man in the armor said. "They did not dare to tell that it was gone, but we know." "And," said Stark, "you will attack Kushat before the thaw when they least expect you." "You have a sharp mind, stranger." "Yes, but the Great Wall will be hard to carry, even so. If I came, bearing in my hands the talisman of Ban Cruach." He did not finish, but turned instead to Thord. "When you plundered the dead man's body, what did you find?" "Nothing, Lord. A few coins, a knife, hardly worth the taking." "And you, Eric John Stark? What did you take from the body?" With perfect truth he answered, "Nothing." "Thord," said the Lord Sieran, "search him." Thord came smiling up to Stark and ripped his jacket open. With uncanny swiftness the Earthman moved. The edge of one broad hand took Thord under the ear, and before the man's knees had time to sag, Stark caught his arm. He turned, crouching forward, and pitched Thord headlong through the door flap. He straightened and turned again. His eyes held a feral glint. "The man has robbed me once," he said. "It is enough." He heard Thord's men coming. 3 of them tried to jam through the entrance at once, and he sprang at them. He made no sound. His fists did the talking for him, and then his feet as he kicked the stunned barbarians back upon their leader. "Now," he said to Lord Sieran, "will we talk as men?" The man in armor laughed, a sound of pure enjoyment. It seemed that the gaze behind the mask studied Stark's savage face, and then lifted to greet the sullen Thord who came back into the shelter, his cheeks flushed crimson with rage. "Go," said the Lord Sieran. The stranger and I will talk." "But, Lord," he protested, glaring at Stark, "it is not safe." "My dark mistress looks after my safety," said Ciaran, stroking the axe across his knees. "Go." Thord went. The man in armor was silent then. The blind mask turned to Stark, who met that eyeless gaze and was silent also. And the bundle of rags in the shadow straightened slowly and became a tall old man with rusty hair and beard, through which peered craggy juts of bone and two bright small points of fire, as though some wicked flame burned within him. He shuffled over and crouched at the feet of the Lord Ciaran, watching the Earthman, and the man in armor leaned forward. "I will tell you something, Eric John Stark. I am a bastard, but I come of the blood of kings. My name and rank I must make with my own hands, but I will set them high, and my name will ring in the Norlands. I will take Kushat. Who holds Kushat holds Mars, and the power and the riches that lie beyond the gates of death." "I have seen them," said the old man, and his eyes blazed. "I have seen Ban Cruach the Mighty. I have seen the temples and the palaces glitter in the ice. I have seen them, the shining ones. Oh, I have seen them, the beautiful, hideous ones." He glanced sidelong at Stark, very cunning. "That is why Otar is mad, stranger. He has seen." A chill swept Stark. He too had seen, not with his own eyes, but with the mind and memories of Ban Cruach 1,000,000 years ago. Then it had been no illusion. The fantastic voyage opened to him by the talisman now hidden in his belt. If this old madman had seen... "What beings lurk beyond the gates of death I do not know," said Ciaran, "but my dark mistress will test their strength, and I think my red wolves will hunt them down once they get a smell of plunder." "The beautiful, terrible ones," whispered Otar. "And oh, the temples and the palaces and the great towers of stone." "Ride with me, Stark," said the Lord Ciaran abruptly. "Yield up the talisman and be the shield at my back. I have offered no other man that honor." Stark asked slowly, "Why do you choose me?" "We are of one blood, Stark, though we be strangers." The Earthman's cold eyes narrowed. "What would your red wolves say to that? And what would Otar say? Look at him, already stiff with jealousy and fear lest I answer yes." "I do not think you would be afraid of either of them." "On the contrary," said Stark, "I am a prudent man." He paused. "There is one other thing. I will bargain with no man until I have looked into his eyes. Take off your helm, Ciaran, and then perhaps we will talk." Otar's breath made a snake-like hissing between his toothless gums, and the hand of the Lord Ciaran tightened on the haft of the axe. "No," he whispered. "That I can never do." Otar rose to his feet, and for the first time Stark felt the full strength that lay in this strange old man. "Would you look upon the face of destruction?" he thundered. "Do you ask for death? Do you think a thing is hidden behind a mask of steel without a reason that you demand to see it?" He turned. "My lord," he said, "by tomorrow the last of the clans will have joined us. After that we must march. Give this Earthman to Thord for the time that remains, and you will have the talisman." The blank, blind mask was unmoving, turned toward Stark, and the Earthman thought that from behind it came a faint sound that might have been a sigh. Then, "Thord!" cried the Lord Ciaran and lifted up the axe. Alright, tune in next week for the continuing adventures of Eric John Stark and the Black Amazon of Mars. Oh, well, I hope this didn't turn out to be too long of an episode, but I hope you enjoyed the Atrim Vonu moon. Remember to share us with a friend, rate, comment, and subscribe on Stitcher, Google Play Music, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And remember, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words, oh, words in the mouth of a witch will do so much worse. Bye.